So I think it's safe to say that after reading headlines like this, the internet probably will and already has started shipping Jake Gyllenhaal and Tom Holland. At least I know I did. So Spider-Man Far From Home is now the third set of Spider-Man sequels in the last 18 years by Sony Pictures. But this one is set in the MCU and it stars Tom Holland as Peter Parker Spider-Man, Zendaya as MJ, Jacob Batalon as Ned, or really he's just playing Genki, who's Miles Morales' best friend, but just given a different name, Marissa Tomei as Aunt May, and this movie brings in Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, and Kobe Smulders as Agent Maria Hill, and it sees Jake Gyllenhaal as Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio. And so this movie is the final MCU movies that takes place in the Phase 3 set of films. And it takes place a few months after Avengers Endgame, where Tony Stark sacrificed himself to defeat Thanos and bring back all the people that were wiped away from the decimation. And Peter Parker and his friends are picking up with the rest of their lives only 5 years later, and they're back in high school, and their school decides to take them on a field trip. And so Spider-Man thinks he's just going to be on vacation. He gets to not be Spider-Man for a while, but a hero's work is never done. And he's recruited by Nick Fury to team up with Quentin Beck, Mysterio, who's said to be from another Earth. And he's here on this Earth to take out a bunch of elementals. Even though I said in the beginning of this video, this movie is another Spider-Man 2. Thankfully, it was nothing like the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it was more in line with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2 in that I think this movie was better than the first movie that came before it. And at this point, Tom Holland has now cemented himself as my favorite Peter Parker and Spider-Man. With that said though, I saw there were a lot of people saying this is the best Spider-Man movie ever, and I don't think it's the best Spider-Man movie. I would still say that movie belongs to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but I would say this is probably my second favorite Spider-Man movie. So suffice to say, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Just like most of the MCU films, I definitely found this movie funny, and I think this movie was funnier than even Spider-Man Homecoming. Like, even the very opening moment in this movie was hilarious. And the thing that makes these Spider-Man movies within the MCU so different is you get to see Peter Parker Spider-Man and his friends actually be kids in high school. Now granted, I know Tom Holland is an adult, he's 23 years old, but when Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were cast as Spider-Man, they were only in high school for the first couple of moments in their first movie. But in these movies, you actually get to see Spider-Man be in high school and deal with high school problems. I mentioned Spider-Verse being my favorite of the Spider-Man movies, and this movie kind of had its own little Spider-Verse going on with all the different costumes that Peter Parker wore in this movie that you see in the trailer. And interestingly enough, all these costumes looked great, to the point that my favorite costume beforehand was the Iron Spider costume, and now it's my least favorite of all the costumes. And speaking of things looking great, and I'm not going to say too much, but the action in this movie, top notch. This is definitely the most comic booky of all the Spider-Man looking films, and I love that. And of course, I couldn't do this review without mentioning Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio. Like, he was probably my favorite addition to this movie. And this is a character that I've always wanted to see in a Spider-Man movie, but never thought we would get because, A, for the most part, if you really think about it, Mysterio's costume looks ridiculous. Like, he's a guy with a fishbowl on his head. But the thing I love about the MCU movies is they take their comic book costumes and the ridiculous nature of them and they embrace them. Like, even when you think about something as ridiculous as Loki's horns, you still see that in these movies. And then you think about Mysterio's costume, they embrace that. And honestly, the costume looks great. And it's something that I wish the X-Men franchise did and embraced. And so when I saw the trailer for this movie, I wasn't sure what they were going to do with the Mysterio character because it's not a spoiler to say Mysterio is a major Spider-Man villain. And in the trailers for this movie, they made it seem like they were going to go a different route with his character. And I'm not going to say too much, but I really enjoyed what they did with Mysterio. My biggest problem with this movie, and probably a reason I didn't enjoy this movie as much as I could have, and this is not a fault of the movie itself, but a lot of the moments that I probably would have really enjoyed were in the trailer. And so there were a lot of scenes where it's like, okay, I know where this is going because I saw it in the trailer. And I hate when movies do that. And this seems to be a big problem specifically with the Sony Spider-Man movies, because we saw the same thing in Spider-Man Homecoming where you see the scene where Spider-Man is holding together that ship, but then they reveal how it's resolved where you see Iron Man comes to help Spider-Man. And I'm just like, why would they show that? And it's the same thing in this trailer. Like, for example, one scene scene where MJ reveals that she knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man. I would have enjoyed that more and would have been like, what? In the theaters if I didn't know it was coming. And so again, that's not on the movie itself, but that's one of my biggest negatives. Now granted, I do have some other negatives, but I can't really talk about it without going into spoilers, so I'll save that for a spoiler review I'm gonna have to do in the next couple days. And yeah, there's a lot of hype going on about the post-credit scenes, and let me say, especially the first post-credit scene, oh yes. Like, that first post-credit scene, that alone boosted my rating for this movie. And it had me smiling from ear to ear, and I think that was a great way to end this phase of Marvel movies. Now, the second post-credit scene, although I'll say that was good too, it wasn't as great in my opinion as the first post-credit scene, and honestly, I was a little disappointed by the second post-credit scene because of what they ended up doing. But again, I'll have to talk more about that when I do my spoiler review. But with that said, both scenes are super important, and they make me even more excited about what's gonna happen in phase 4. But yeah, Spider-Man Far From Home, I wouldn't say it's in my top 5 of MCU films, but that's not a negative because that's a very high bar of films with Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, etc. But I still thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and like I said, it's probably my favorite live-action Spider-Man movie, but my favorite Spider-Man movie goes to Spider-Verse, and I definitely plan on seeing this movie again. So yeah, Spider-Man Far From Home, I would say is a definite blockbuster. But I will say, this movie definitely made me want to go back and play Spider-Man on the PS4 using one of my favorite suits, which is this, because reasons. So Spider-Man Far From Home, did you see it? What did you think about it? Where does this rank in terms of your love for Spider-Man movies? Let me know down in the comment section below. Also, if you can, hit that thumbs up button and like this video. It'll really help out the channel. And if you're new to my channel, please check out the other videos on my channel. And if you like what you see, please subscribe for more and tell your friends, families, and neighbors about my channel to help me continue to grow. And as always, I'll catch you guys next time.